Well, thanks for your kind words. I appreciate it. So, decision making. I'm here to talk about wise decision making. And it's a little tricky to talk about decision making. I wondered, what should I say? I had to make a decision about that. In fact, decision making is so critical, I've actually added a couple decision making questions to our interview process. And I want to share with you what I learned from a recent interview. We asked somebody, because they had one of these really key jobs, they're a leader, and we said, "Are you good at making snap decisions?" 20 minutes later, they said, "No." That's a joke. So then I asked, did they have a problem making decisions? They said, yes and no. Now, with a little bit more seriousness, I know that good decision making is a skill that some of you have some facility, right? Whether or not you believe in Darwinism, you survived this long because you've made a lot of good decisions and you avoided a lot of bad ones. You just can't make it in life. This is a dangerous place, this world. And so when I talk about some tools, I'm hoping, and this is going to sound odd, but just hang with me for just a minute. I'm going to convince you that my goal is why you shouldn't be vampires when you make decisions. Vampires are the worst decision makers because they have no reflection. Now, I'm serious about this because I want you to think for another moment, because the power tool to decision making is reflection. It's a habit of the mind, because when we make poor decisions, it's usually how we gain wisdom, is at the cost of our previous poor decisions. That's how we learned. But we can optimize and get a little bit of ahead if we learn from other people's mistakes. That's hard to do, though. And so the way for us to take that experience seriously enough is to envision it, imagine it, experience it, and that will help us form the beliefs and become the kind of people who make wise decisions. It's really a character-based endeavor, and the road there is through making a practice, improving your reflection. So we're going to do a few tools, and I'm hoping that even today we'll become a little bit wiser. I'm going to get my first tool. It's very technical. This is a chronoscope. And this decision-making tool, now my first name for this was actually a knowledge of counterfactuals of human freedomoscope, but my wife said that wasn't a very catchy title. So I think chronoscope is better, and the way that it works is I'm going to look through, and if I look in this direction, I can see all the possible futures that might happen from the things that I actively choose, right? There are things that I'm going to make an active decision, and because of what I did, I see the results, and I can imagine through the chronoscope here how someone might respond. So let's take a simple example. Say I ask my wife, I make a comment like, and of course, as a husband who's survived this long in marriage, we've been together 30 years, and we're doing really good. And part of it's because I said, should I say I really like those new jeans? And when I look at it, the first thing I notice is that there's an outcome where she says, "Aw, you don't even like my jeans. You just like looking at my legs." But it might also come out that when I look through, she says, "So you like these new jeans? Does that mean I look fat in my old jeans?" Now, there's a little bit of wisdom you got to apply before you answer. And the thing that I want to point out is not the joke part. It's that I regularly tell people that it's on my annual goals to stay married. And at first people think I'm kidding, because I'm kind of a kidder. And I'm like, no, I plan to stay married this year. And when I say that, what they don't realize is that I write it on my goals because anything that's really worth doing, that I value, that I care about, is something that I make intentional choices about. Those intentional choices, so my goal becomes a trigger for reflection. That's what I'm doing. And I think about what are the possibilities? What's the future that I want to happen? And through reflection, I start to make the choices that help me get there so that I'll become that kind of person. Now, sadly, the data for my chronoscope is calibrated to me, so I can't share this one with you. But I do have a tool that I'm going to share with you right now that we're going to even practice for just a minute, and it's the eulogy tool. And maybe some of you have done this. There's a few people who do this every day. There's people who do this every year. This is a common tool, but if you haven't heard of it, it works this way. You imagine you're at your funeral, okay? And you really need to take some time to do this because reflection's not easy. Life crowds you out. So really take a moment and imagine you're at your funeral and you're hearing your eulogy spoken. But you get to decide what you want people to say. So think about, what do you want someone to say at your funeral? What do I want them to say for my eulogy? And who do I want to say it? Those are the two biggest questions that you use for this tool. What do I want them to say at my funeral, and who do I want to say it? And what this kind of wisdom does is it exposes your values and helps you make the decisions, because at the end of thinking about this question for a few minutes, you start to get some ideas. You start to have some thoughts, and you notice the difference, the delta for Ray, between what you want to be said and the trajectory that you're currently on. So I want you to just take a second right now. Let me give you 30 of them, actually. And I want you to take a note of what's one thing that you want to be said at your eulogy. And just take a note of it and who said it. Now, I'm going to begin to interrupt. Keep finishing your note for those of you who are writing. But I want you to commit. And maybe what you do is make a plan and make a commitment right now, if you want to get the most out of this tool, and take at least 10 minutes sometime in the next week to think through this till you can't think of any more things to be said at your funeral. Right? Make the biggest list you can. And I know for me, I kind of grow a little bit every year, and so I need to use this tool more than once. I've gotten a lot out of it. Author Donald Miller does something like this, I think every day, or he at least includes this part of his vision statement. But there's a lot of different people who use this kind of thing. But wait, there's more. Because with my chronoscope, if you look at it this direction, you get to see all the things that would have happened or happen because of what you don't do. Okay? And in a way, you can think about this as being in regret mode. Maybe it's a regretoscope when you look at it this way. And so this is the kind of decision that you make because either, one, you aren't doing some things, and if you don't do them, you're going to regret that you never tried. And some of those things stick out because you think about them all the time. Maybe it's the business you never launched. Maybe it's, or it also goes the other way. There are things that you're not doing because you did something else, right? So you have a regret that's holding you back from your calling and your dreams. These are the two main ways this works. And in my case, when I looked through the regretoscope a few years ago, I saw an event from my childhood because my cousins and I, my cousin Jake and I are on this side of the street, and my cousin Josh, which is his brother, and a bunch of his friends, right? So we're outnumbered. We're in a mud ball fight. And we're chucking mud balls. I mean, it was the 80s, right? And I put a rock in one of these mud balls, and I lobbed it and it hit my cousin Josh right in the face. He had plastic surgery, whole mess. I mean, it was a big deal. He was seriously injured. And as far as I knew, nobody knew who threw the rock but me. And these guys, I kind of grew up with them because as my dad was making the business, starting the family business, I pretty much lived with these guys. They were like my brothers. And at some point, looking through the regretoscope, I was like, this is one of the people I love the most, but I'm doing a bad job because I've got this regret. So I confess to him, and I say, Josh, it was me. I threw the rock. And I thought I might have just screwed up one of the most important relationships in my life. But instead what happened is he loved me and he forgave me, and we have a wildly crazy love and acceptance of each other. We have a relationship that I could have never hoped for in a different way had I not looked through the regretoscope. And I'm like, what a great decision that was to tell Josh after all these years, even though it's like, oh, is it just a kid thing? And I made up excuses. I did all these things. But the regretoscope had me blow past that and weigh the significance of this decision. Now, a visualization exercise for you to try, I like to call something like the emotional balloon ride. I don't have a catchy title for this, but what I do is I go through this exercise where I think about all the right decisions and all the positive emotions that you have. Because when you make a really good decision, you feel good about it. You have a sense of, oh, yeah. Like even some of the hard ones, you know it's going to work out. And so all of those things act as this thing that sort of takes you up to the mountains of joy. And you're like, you know what? This is great. But the regrets are like chains that weigh you down. And when I think about what are the chains on my basket holding my balloon down from getting to the heights that it needs to be, things start to come to mind. So take a moment and just write down maybe one chain that's holding you back. Don't worry if it's the most heavy one. Don't overthink it. Just think for a second. Let's just take 30 seconds or so and write down one thing that maybe is a regret that I'm going to regret if I don't do it, or this is a regret that's holding me back. I wanted you to at least try this enough to get a little bit of traction. You can finish writing your notes. And I'm going to encourage all of you, if you when you try doing this exercise later, and I'd encourage you to do so, that you actually write things down. We have a higher percentage chance of making changes when we write something down. It gives us clarity. It makes us commit. There's all kinds of psychological things that start to happen when you just put a pen to paper or a stylus to notepad, or whatever your writing tool is, do that. And I wanted to also mention that these kinds of things have an interesting effect over time. And let me get my next tool to share with you. All right. This is a perspectoscope, right? You get some. It works like a periscope in one sense because it gets you out of seeing the box that you're in, right? We're all in a box of some sort. We're limited by something in our vision. But when we get perspective, we see beyond that. But unlike a periscope, periscopes actually give you a view of what's shallower. This works by giving you a view of what's deeper. So the perspectoscope is a little bit interesting because we lack perspective often because we don't have a clear enough picture of reality. And this is super important. And literally we could do a whole talk of things that prevent us from seeing reality. And so I'm only going to touch on a couple things here, but one of the things that I'm going to talk about is confirmation bias. Right? It's one of the most famous biases. This is the sort of thing, confirmation bias is basically we find evidence for what we already believe. And I did an interesting experiment with this where there's this big auditorium, there's a lot of people in it, maybe about 600 people, and we showed a picture and we said, find brown items in this picture. You know, and you have 20 seconds. People make a quick list, okay. Put that down. More talking happens, more talking happens. Okay, we're going to show the picture again, and you need to get a new piece of paper, make a list, 20, 30 seconds, go. Okay, now that you've made your two lists, compare the two. How many of you found the same exact items? Almost all the hands go up. And it's shocking. Like, they're all like, what? I can't believe this. And psychologists are really people who kind of cleverly mess with folks for pay. They just trick them. And that's why I like reading them, because I like some of those things. We're sort of mischievous in my house. And these guys decided to talk about confirmation bias through this experiment where what they did is they told people coming in, we need you to count the number of people. We're going to show you a video of people playing a game with basketballs. And while they're playing this game, your job is to count the number of people, the number of passes that people in white shirts make. And there's black shirts and white shirts, and there's balls going everywhere. And so they watch the video, and halfway through the video, a man in a gorilla suit saunters through the game. And he gets to the midpoint of all the action of the game, turns to the camera, and beats his chest. And then saunters out of the game. At the end of the video, they ask people, not how many balls did you count. They said, did you notice anything unusual in the game? Did you notice anyone walking through the game? Did you notice a gorilla? And 50% said, a what? Shocked. Absolutely shocked. They show them the video again, the same video. And people are like, they don't even know what to do with themselves. They're like, how did I not see that? And 90% of them believed they would notice something unusual, something important. If it came by, they would notice it. If it's important, I'm going to see it. But what it tells us, if we want to make wise decisions, and we want to get all the information we can about reality, that we got a 50-50 shot at noticing what's important. We got a 50-50 shot. But it also means that if we talk to somebody else who watched the same video, we got a good chance to discover what we would have missed. So if we want to make a wise decision, we need to get the perspective of others. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. And so I suggest that we need to do something to regularly request the perspective of others to include their insight when we're making an important decision. Okay? That's how we get wise, through the counsel of others and what they see. And I want to tell you, and I have employees, and I have biases that come up that I'm not aware of. Like, for example, I've gone out and there's people who I think, man, they're doing a great job. And I see them out there working, and I notice, oh, they're doing a good job. And then we come up to the reviews, and I'm reading the reviews, and I notice, man, this guy's got some terrible marks, and his results are horrible. And I was praising him. Whoops. Or maybe your bias goes the other way. And you're thinking somebody is just a screw-up. And so every time you notice them, you're noticing what they do wrong. Then you look at that review, and hopefully it was done by a competent manager, and they weren't listening to what your thoughts were, and they're actually crushing it. Well, the point is, we need to be good decision makers, and we need to form the habits to become the kind of person that people know they can talk to. Let me say that one more again. You want to become the kind of person that people can talk to. This is not easy, especially for leaders. And so you need to intentionally overcome the biases that block communication. This covers a lot more than confirmation bias because, again, wise decision-making requires improved habits of reflection. So this is something we need to think about on a regular basis. And cognitive bias, confirmation bias in particular, is literally our default way of getting information because it's efficient. And that's what our brains do, is they have the most efficient way to get that thought. That's what the brain does. And so here's my tool, the blind spot request. The blind spot request. And it's a really simple set of questions. You first ask to the people who might know some information. You're having the meeting, we're going to make the big call. What am I missing? What am I missing? Because there's a good chance you miss something. The next question that you ask, and this is absolutely even more important, what else am I missing? What else am I missing? And you're going to ask it a third time. Now, I don't know if you know this, but in the Midwest, and that's where we are. If you're new, welcome, If you just moved here, someone will probably bring some cookies over. But one of the things that's true is if you ask if somebody's hungry, you typically need to ask 3 times before they'll accept. It's a little unwritten rule, right? There's also a goodbye that happens, right? Where you have to announce that you're going, right? Then you tell a few specific people that you're going, and then there's the goodbye at the car as you finally drive away, right? I don't know if your family's like this, but a lot of people in the Midwest, it's a thing. I think it's especially in southern Indiana, but that's only by rumor. But the point is, people often won't believe you that you're serious about listening to what you're missing, especially if you're in a position of authority. They're not going to believe it unless you make a habit of becoming the kind of person that they can talk to. So another thing that you want to do that will absolutely screw this up, and so this is a hot tip at maximizing this tool, is when they say the thing that you're missing, you don't act defensive. You don't correct them. You don't say something that disputes the claim, or else they will probably never share with you another thing you're missing again. But if instead you say, hold on a second, and you write it down. Now, the power of writing down other people's words is incredible. Hold on just a second. Let me write this down. This is important. And I tell people this is important because it is. Not just what they say, but the fact of our relationship. This is what I'm affirming. I'm affirming this interaction that you, another human being, care enough to correct me, to risk something, to tell me something that I need to know. And I want to affirm that. And so when you do this, this is super powerful. And if you say, thank you so much, and then you follow up, that's the supercharger. You follow up and you say, I did some thinking about this, and I really agree. Or, now, I disagree, but let me tell you why, and let me see if I've just got this right, because maybe I missed it. They hear your disagreement differently. Now you're not being defensive. You told them, I'm giving you veto power on my observation. Blows their mind. All right. Last question, or tool. This is the most important tool. This is a stethoscope. The stethoscope is the most important decision-making tool because the best predictor of making a wise decision is your heart. Now, I mean, I'm super nerdy. I analyze everything. I got a master's degree in analytic philosophy. Like, I can think really hard. I got critical thinking skills up the wazoo. And I used to think making a wise decision was just all about my head. And it's not. You're a whole person. And the heart is actually a place where a person is integrated. It takes into account the head, and it takes into account the emotions, and it takes into account all sorts of things. And the thing about the heart that we worry about is we all know some sweet idiots. Right? We all know some people who are like, man, their heart's in the right place. And if you're in the South, right, they're like, bless your heart. Bless your heart. That means you are a sweet idiot. And when you're worried about the sweet idiot, you're thinking that the biggest problem is I'm going to make too many wrong decisions. Well, as every business leader knows, you need more decisions. You're going to make tons of wrong decisions. Wrong decisions are not the thing that stop you from success. It's not making enough of the right ones. That's where the action is. Not making enough right decisions is the wisest course of action that you want to create enough wise decisions. You want to have that be the majority, right? And this balance thing is something to take into account. I mean, Martin Luther, I think, said a drunken man can fall off a horse on either side. It's wisdom I take to heart. It just means that, we can screw it up, the decision going in either way. And sometimes you're softer on one side, and so you ought to lean in that way because it makes for a better landing. But this danger is if we don't make enough right decisions, we won't have done enough for the things we really love. We won't have done enough to live freer and truer to all of our potential. And we'll have created less total impact, less good, by trying to be too focused on being critical. Now, I'm not in any way advocating that we're not critical. It's just that we need to prioritize the heart and not leave it out of the equation. And the proof of this is because the people who are famous bad decision makers, who've been unwise, proclaim to us loudly from their deathbeds, I wish I would have spent more time with my family. I wish I would have done these things. They're looking through the regretoscope. And they're experiencing it very painfully and bitterly. But you know what they never say? I wish I would have just spent a little more time on the office. I wish I would have perfected that one presentation just a little bit more. I wish. And there's all sorts of things that we all know that they're not saying. So we should hear them. We should listen to them. I think the wisest person who ever lived was Jesus, and he summed the same idea up with, what would it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? I think he's onto something there. That we need to think through the spiritual lens. The stuff that holds our values is our heart. And the tool for you that I want to share might be a little bit more surprising. It's a tool that I know all of you have, some of you use. We're going to do a soulish cardiogram with our calendars. I know some of you still have your Franklin Covey planner from the 90s and you're filling it out daily. But there's others of you, you've moved to your phone. Whatever you do, however you track your calendar, here's how the exercise works. Look at your last 90 days. Okay, look at your last 90 days. But imagine it's not you. I want you to draw a picture of what does this person love and prioritize. Because the things that really matter to us most, we make intentional decisions about, remember? And so, if you're going to prioritize this, you put it in your calendar. You don't want to screw that up. So, draw me a sketch of the person who owns this calendar. Write it out. And if you're like me, I don't need to reflect too much to know I got some improvements to make. There are some things I really need to change. That there's a difference between that calendar and the calendar that I want. And I start to make some edits. Date night, because I want to stay married. But I use my calendar, this soulish review, to help me reflect. To say, what are the choices I'm making? Right? Because the thing about wisdom, we know from the old coach quote about how the choices you make you, right? Which is, we could say it's a paraphrase of Aristotle. I'm not sure we want to get that nerdy right now, but wise decision making requires these improved habits of reflection. And so you need to use your tool, your calendar, not just for what do I need to do, but what did I do? Right? When you do your weekly review, maybe you want to look at not just what tasks I need to move forward, but what things didn't I include that I should have. That's the heart of the tool right there. And vampires don't do this. They never reflect. In fact, they exist by stealing life from others rather than building life, rather than giving life. And I believe that the way it works is love is superabundant, right? That's actually a technical term. Like when God made the universe, the reason why the universe came into existence is because God loves himself. He's triune. That the Father said to the Son, I love you. The Son said to the Spirit, I love you. You know, it's all going around. It's a big love fest. But out of that love, more things are born. So the universe was born out of the superabundance of love. And then, that's just the picture of marriage, right? Out of the superabundance of love, kids come out. We've got one over there. We got proof this works. I know some kids. I was one once. I have some of my own. But I know that when I love God and I love people, I live life with less regrets. I have more joy. And I do it in community with people who become my trusted advisors. Thanks.